giving you a voice.
Making it loud our own way.
Welcome to the fun.
Let's jump right into our judging, starting with Team 241. RC started off.
For 241, it's a pretty cool bot. First time, seems like it's CADing out. I like the intake. I like the Sensified Pro gearbox. Definitely got a long way to go to finish it up, though.
All right.
We got for this guy.
Sounds good. All right, let's move over to 247 with Casey.
All right, 247 was a robot called Turtle Saver, so they went for a mostly passive system using low amount of energy. Big problems on this one were it seemed like it was going to be really hard to line up to actually score the discs or even receive them because it was pretty narrow. And additionally, using no motors for any of those systems is going to be rough.
Oh, yeah, and Team 241 came in 60th place. 247 ended in 44th. Now let's move on to Clint with Team 25.
All right, Team 25 came in right around the 58th place mark. They went with a Kiwi drive to help them with lineup, but it'll leave them exposed to defense. And given the shooting nature of the robot, that's not going to be a great thing. They got a lot of moving pieces that have to work together, and the detail just wasn't quite there to finish it out. Overall, very creative concept. Just the might have been lacking a little bit on the execution side.
All right, now we're going to move back to RC with 171.
171, also a good-looking robot. They had some work to do. A lot of CAD details missing for me. Ooh, camera's on. There you go. Sorry, guys. But, yeah, 171 had a lot of work to do, and in my opinion, they just need a better shoulder joint, a lot of details missing, and maybe next time they'll be better.
So, Garrison, could you give us some info on Team 212?
Sorry, I'm muted again, just so you don't hear the dog. So 212, they did a pretty unique swerve drive. It was very light, but because it's so light, it probably wouldn't work. Their floor pickup that they say they have wouldn't work. It just got to double check some stuff here. The axles weren't very well supported. There's a few issues with this one. But hey, good try at a swerve drive. Definitely worth a shot at. And I hope you learned some good stuff.
Absolutely. They came in 56th place. Now we're going to move to Casey with Team 213.
So Team 213 was in 32nd place. They had an interesting design with a swerve drive and kind of a catcher for the gears, or for the discs, at the human player station that seemed like it was going to be really compliant to catching them in a lot of orientations. Some of the big weaknesses on this is they had no floor pickup and no climb. So, once discs start falling on the floor or towards the end game, they were going to kind of miss out on some opportunities there. But there was a lot of good detail in there.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So can we move to Team 182?
Yeah, so coming in just behind Team 213 was 182 and 34th place. They went with a very 1986-esque 2013 pickup, just kind of a polycarb spatula that lifted into a chute. The one downfall I saw in this design was no way to actively capture the discs, so everything was kind of free-floating, leaving them open to getting hit from the side and discs falling out. They also lacked a little bit of detail on the elevator, which anyone who's designed and built an elevator before realizes that that's one place you absolutely cannot skip on the detail. Overall, I think it was a decent concept with a little bit of refinement during a hypothetical season. I think they could have gone pretty far with this.
Awesome. Can we move to Team 80?
Okay, in 39th place, Team 80. I really enjoyed this bot. I like the fact that, for me, the highlight was they were able to score outside the backside of the intake, which I thought was a key game breaker for a lot of these designs. A lot of teams are going to shoot into the chute wouldn't work so well. I think some of the things that need improvement upon, for me, the elevators seemed like it would snap off, no supports. Bearing were too wide, too far apart, printed bearing blocks. Probably a bad idea for the carrier. It takes a lot of load. The intake and the shoulder joint or the pivot need a lot more work. But overall, good try. Yeah, very good job.
All right, so let's move to Team 48.
All right, yeah, so Team 48, they ended up with a pretty low score. I think they ended up submitting late or fixing their link late, so there were some low numbers. I don't think they got judged all the way, but it's actually a pretty good looking robot. They've got this A-frame thing going on. It's basically like a Spectrum from this year is what it looks like. solid drive, decent looking A-frame, missing a little bit on detail. Their execution's actually pretty good. It looks that style of intake would be really hard with a flat disc to actually get it to pick up off the floor correctly. But overall, it's a decent looking robot. I think they just got submitted a little late. I think is what happened there.
Yep. All right. So we're going to move to team 198.
So team 198 ranked 37th. They kind of had an interesting take on avoiding needing an elevator having this large pivoting arm, which I thought was a cool choice, but I was a little concerned without having a brake or anything on that arm, lifting it up and down frequently. You may see a lot of load on that motor and it may overheat. Additionally, they had an effort at a climber mechanism that could go all the way up, but with how far forward those hooks are and where the center of gravity wasn't too sure if they'd be able to make it all the way up there. It was a really interesting design. They also went with an H drive to try and increase their mobility around the field and keep their options open.
Yeah, definitely an interesting design. All right, can we do 209?
All right, that's me again. So this had an interesting climber on it, but the chassis was not real robust, not real detailed at all. Intake actually looked kind of solid, but like a good idea, but again, very little detail on it. And then a lot of stuff just kind of floating there and not really secured. No connection to electronics or anything like that. But it was a good idea, just not quite executed all the way.
And that earned team 209 the 58th spot. So let's move to 220.
So team 220 was ranked 61. They had a design that looked kind of good in terms of the imagery of it, but they were lacking some of the critical details of like how the elevator was going to move up and down. Additionally, the intake looked like it was going to struggle a little bit without having any kind of active capturing other than just a bar that kind of held the disc in place. So that was some of the main struggles. It was a good start in some areas, like they included the electronics. Some of the details were nice, but some of the areas definitely just needed a little bit more refinement to nail the design down.
Right. All right, so let's move to team 38. That'd be Clint.
Team 88?
88.
All right, so team 88 ranked 37th. I was actually kind of surprised these guys ranked in the 30s. I thought they had great execution around. They neglected to put in a floor pickup, which was probably a strategic choice. They had individual disc drop off, a multi-level climber. I think pretty good detail overall. I liked a lot of the things they did. They probably needed to support their elevator a little bit more. When you get these elevators up high, you need to support them more than just a few rivets at the bottom. And I think a lot of teams missed on that, and this was one of them. So I hope they learned a lot. I think they had a great start. Just a few more refinement details to work out, and it would have been a great robot for sure.
Absolutely. So you're about 234.
234 came in at 52nd place. This robot had a lot of potential, but a lot of details missing. The intake pivot is non-existent. Intake, needs to have some stuff there. Just a lot of details missing. I think for this team, they need to go back and spend more time working on the details. Kind of like what Clint said, there's no bottom supports for a lot of these robots, including this one. There's no supports. When you're doing stuff that has a lot of vertical area, you need to have some angled supports, because if you don't have them, they're going to rip right at the base. And we saw at multiple competitions this year, every event that we went to, we saw teams having the same issue over and over again. So following Clint's advice, this team needs some work and put the supports in.
Absolutely. All right, let's move to 231.
Yeah, so this robot was a little interesting. It's kind of good looking if it was playing the 2013 game maybe, but it's a shooter. So it suffered pretty bad on the execution or effectiveness category. Did okay in detail and did all right in creativity. I mean, it is a shooter, but you're shooting at a vertical slot. So that's going to land them a little lower down in the rankings.
What do you mean? It all works in CAD.
No,
So,
it doesn't.
and that earned them the 47th place. So let's move to team 258.
So team 258 came in just ahead of them at rank 45. This was a local specialist robot. The So they also included a climber, which didn't have as much support as kind of what we were talking on in the last view, so I won't go into too much detail on that. Some of the biggest issues for me on this one were the way that the arm pivoted. It was along the outside of the frame, so it was outside of the main frame rail, so it's going to be really hard to legally do bumpers, at least with the way the rules have been written for the past couple of years. So that was one of my major issues with it. The mechanism should help. It seemed like it could be a decent low goal specialist, but there are a few of those critical details in terms of getting things in frame perimeter and all that I need to iron out to really lock it down.
Definitely. So, Clint, how do you feel about Team 149?
Yeah, so Team 149 ended up in the 34th spot. Overall, I like this team's, their collector. I think their elevator even was pretty well done. They had the support. It looked pretty robust. One thing I didn't like about this, they had basically like a giant pizza spatula that would hold their discs. And, as you're, driving around the field, I think anybody who's played an FRC game knows that if you don't physically hold on to the game object throughout the match, you're going to lose them on the field. And every time you lose a disc, that's basically another cycle you have to complete, or you have to spend time picking up that one. So I think this one loses out in the effectiveness. I like the detail in this one was pretty good. The overall concept was sound. They just needed a little bit more on their disc delivery strategy, and they would have been great. And as a member of like the over the back score from this year, I think that was a good add-on for this robot as well.
Definitely. And that's going to move us into our second giveaway. Tyler, could you give us some info on that?
Well, we got a draw for our first giveaway actually coming up here. So let's take a look once again at the Analog Devices gyro board here. So we're going to do that drawing. Once again, you got to make sure you follow or subscribe. If you don't follow or subscribe and you win, we're just going to redraw. And the winner of this one looks like it's going to be W. Doherty, a subscriber who's won a few times already on Fun. Congratulations, W. Doherty, for winning the Analog Devices gyro board. And we got another giveaway, as Sam just mentioned as well. And that's going to be the Versaplanetary 180-degree drive. Let's take a look at this here. Once again, from Vex Pro, you can get in on this and win the 180-degree drive if you type in the following keyword: Versaplanetary. Hopefully you know how to spell that, but we'll type it in chat in just a little bit. Versaplanetary, once again, will get you your chance to win the Versaplanetary 180 drive, and you have to make sure you follow or subscribe.
All right, so that's going to move us into Team 119.
So this team came in pretty hot, 32nd place. And probably one of my favorite bots, this judging contest. They had a 971 clone on steroids. I felt like it was a pretty good bot, but you're missing a lot of detail, electronics, supports, etc. But I definitely think this person should send their resume to Aaron Hill and join that Team 971. And beyond that, I'm done.
That earned them the 32nd place. Let's move to Team 36.
All right, Team 36 ended up there in 51st place, and you look at their robot. It's got, again, kind of like a lot of these, a real solid idea. Not a whole lot of creativity in this one. Kind of a similar intake style that we've seen from a lot of the teams so far. Similar climber on an elevator type of thing. That's actually a separate elevator from their main elevator. Main problem with this one, their CAD that they submitted didn't work. It wasn't all the way assembled right. And so everything I was trying to do at least was mostly based on the renders, which is pretty tough. That gave them a little lower score. And a lot of their weight on their elevator is at the top of the elevator, which is a huge problem. Not well supported. That robot's either going to tip or the elevator will shear off, whichever comes first. Maybe both.
Both awesome things to have into your robot. So that's going to move us to 230.
So Team 230 was ranked 46. They went with a kind of simple design to just go catch the discs from the human player station and drop them into the game board. One of the issues in terms of effectiveness was just that this deliver method wasn't going to work for the co-op bin or the logo, so they were going to struggle a little bit in quals to find those extra RP. This was another robot that it seemed like it was going to be a little bit difficult to get it to start in frame perimeter. Just the front lip of that frisbee hopper was just barely outside. Also, there was either a lot of detail missing in the frame or there were a lot of welds going on it that were going to be a little concerning with how much of that frame would be at risk of, weld failing and all of a sudden your whole competition is out the door.
Yep. All right, that's going to move us to 176.
Yeah, so team Two Turrets Too Many ended up in the 34th spot. No turrets actually on the robot, which I thought was interesting given the team name. This is a team lacked a lot of detail. There was, I think the concept was pretty close to being good. They just didn't quite have the time to finish it out. This team might have gone a little overboard on bringing the CG down by putting motors for their arm at the bottom. You end up with this super long chain run, which is doable, but less than ideal, I guess. This was a relatively new team based on their scouting sheet, and I think they might have bit off a little bit more than they could chew, which is a valuable lesson for anyone doing FRC, right? If you don't have the resources, don't go super complicated, right? Just focus on doing a few things really well, and you'll be more successful that way. But overall, good start. Lots of detail on the drivetrain, just the end effectors and actual disk transfer mechanisms weren't quite at the snuff. So.
Nope, and it's a lot cheaper to learn in CAD than with a robot. So that's going to move us to team 206.
Team 206 was 53rd. I actually didn't judge this team because the links didn't work, so I'm judging them on the spot, I guess. So for these guys, I like the robot's pretty cool, but timing belts on the drivetrain, 9mm, probably not going to last. Plastic Versa hubs on the main shoulder joint, probably not going to last. Overall, I think it's a cool buy. I think we got a better score if we could actually judge it, or if I could have. Did anyone actually judge this bot?
What team? Team 96?
Team 206.
206.
I think the links were the issue.
I did a little bit, yeah. They had a couple of interferences going on, like stuff hidden motors. Their structure was running into stuff. They had a couple of the way their axles were set up with motors on opposite sides of a really long axle, and some weird torquing issues I was worried about. Their motor allocation on their intake was kind of bizarre too. They had them the way they had them split up. If they had split them up like on different rollers, it would have made more sense. They had and sorry, I'm just going through all my old notes. And their frame was super not rigid. That was the other thing.
Yeah, they have this giant U frame.
Yeah, that's right.
But that was the problem with a lot of the teams. A lot of teams could have benefited from a belly pan, and like a lot of teams, electronics vertically drives me nuts because what's the point when you just put them on the bottom? I don't know.
Yeah, if you mount your electronics vertically, there should be a pretty good reason.
Yeah, very few times I think it's beneficial, but.
Yeah.
All right, so Garrison, you're not done yet. Can you teach us about Team 44?
Yeah, I can. Let me scroll back up in my notes. So this robot had decent looking intake that could actually grasp the discs fairly well. Some things they were lacking on. They didn't actually give us a scouting sheet. I didn't like that. All the teams were required to submit a scouting sheet. They didn't give us, so everything we're going on is based on their CAD. Have to try and figure out what their strategy was. I don't like that. Their swerve drive did not really benefit any strategies, as it looked like it was about to fall apart. You got really weak top plates and bottom plates like that, and a lot of torque coming from those reverse planetaries. I was really worried about this particular drivetrain. And then same kind of deal as the last one, not rigid. So you've got these wheels that are lifting your robot way up, and your robot's going to get not in a good situation. The elevator is not very rigidly mounted. A lot of the same stuff, we've been talking about.
Yep. All right. So that earned them the 47th place. So that's going to move us to Team 211.
So Team 211 came in at rank 55, and I kind of like this robot. This robot was something that I would kind of encourage a newer team or a team without as many resources. Like, I thought that this was a pretty good target for a team like that, maybe with a little bit fewer elements refined. It's got a pretty big catcher for the discs to come into, so it'll be easy to line up with the human player station, and then it's just a very simple roller system that's going to be pushing those discs right out into the low goal. So it's optimized for those cycles. Biggest critiques were some of the supports were well done, but in some areas it was missing the supports that were going to be required to to keep things lasting through a whole season. And also, obviously, it was targeted at low goal specialization, so it's going to be missing out on some of those other aspects of the game, like the climbing and the ability to score in the game board, which is going to be crucial in some of those matches.
Yep. All right. Let's move to Team 96.
Yeah, so Team 96 came in at the 54th spot. This is another team, we've been, it seems like we're getting on these themes where we harp on certain things. But this is a swerve drive with essentially no tie in the front part of the robot to keep their frame rigid. If they accidentally drove one swerve module opposite the other, I think they could end up with all swerve modules in a line. I like the creativity with the extendable arm. They have a fixed wrist, which I thought was kind of interesting. Not many teams went with that. Their climber, I thought, lacked detail. So did some of their support mechanisms. So, an interesting concept. Definitely could have done with a little bit more work. And all these teams were crunched for time. So I get that. So there's interferences going on, but overall, interesting concept, lack of execution, and ended up in 54th.
All right. RC, how do you feel about Team 169?
I think they're a cool bot. These guys, I'm sure it's their first time caddying. The drivetrain looks solid, but beyond that, everything else is block sketched out. Lots of work to do. The elevator is non-existent. There's a guy named Adam Hurd. He has a great T system, a very good tutorial for the elevator. Shout out to Adam right now. Beyond that, a lot of work to do. I think your chassis needs to be multiple parts. Work on your assembly skills. Beyond that, don't got anything else.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like a good first try. So that's going to move us to Team 240.
Yeah, kind of similar situation going on here. It feels like a pretty good first try. There's a lot of COTS parts going in that are actually used fairly effectively. But everything else is kind of lacking detail. They kind of they slapped a bunch of COTS parts together, and then everything else is sort of block modeled in. This one, I think, ended up a little bit higher. They did a little bit better job, a more robust job. The intake carriage is a little bizarre. It's a square shape. You can kind of see it in the front there. I'm not sure if that would work real well, but this one's just a little bit more solid of a COTS robot, really.
Yep. All right. So let's move to Team 238.
So Team 238 came in at rank 41. Overall, I thought that it was a decent robot, but there were a few elements that still needed more refinement. One of them, like a few robots, the intake motor seemed to be a little bit outside frame perimeter. It was going to be really tight getting it in. Make sure every once in a while to take a top view of your CAD and just look and make sure that everything's going to be able to get in at the start of the match, or you're going to have a rough day on inspection. Couple other things. It seems like this was one of a few robots that may struggle to get 2 discs inside the intake because it's the same motor that's running the intake all the way up across the whole roller system. So when you're trying to keep those rollers running to get the second disc in there, the first one's just going to shoot out the back. So you're going to have a little bit of a problem with that. And then as we've been talking about, this was another one that the elevator might need a little more bracing to be able to withstand the rigors of competition. As soon as you run into anything, this one might get chopped up.
Yep. All right, Clint, how do you feel about 207?
Yeah, 207 suffered the same elevator support issues that everybody else had. Guys, just put a gusset to your elevator and everything will get better. This robot, I say that, but then I love this robot. It went all out with the disc collection from the human player. This intake is dope, right? It collects the human player, right? And it can either score 2 vertically into the Connect 4, or it could score 2 side by side. So if you're going for like a horizontal Connect 4, great, you got that. If you're going for a vertical Connect 4, you got that too. So I love the creativity on this robot. I scored them very highly there. They actually had pretty good detail. They lacked some of the the supporting features and whatnot, but overall, I was a big fan of this robot. They came in ranked 39th. Based on my scoring, not to slander any of the other judges. They probably should have been higher than that. But I love this robot. I thought it was very unique. And as far as creativity goes, I think they nail it on the head here.
Absolutely. That looks really cool. All right, we're going to move to Team 205.
These guys ranked 42nd. I thought it was a pretty cool robot. They had mechanisms for the drivetrain. The bucket at the top was a little weird for me. I didn't think I was very impressed with that, but everything else was okay. Missing a lot of gussets, but they had the support for once. That was good. I think they could have benefited from a belly pan. The battery's pretty up high. Beyond that, I just think it needs a lot more work. Probably need more of an active roller system to score those frisbees. But beyond that, that's all I got for these guys. Just need a lot more work.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, it's a 3-day competition. It is super hard to get the CAD in. All right, Garrison, how do you feel about 251?
Yeah, so 251, I don't have a picture of their robot in front of me, but it was a pretty good start to a solid robot. Decent looking strategy. It's like I said, good start, but lacking on detail a little bit. Oh, there it is. Their intake plates, as you can see, kind of are just there. Not a whole lot of fleshing out done. Drive gearboxes are a little wimpy. Need a little bit just more material. And it's same kind of thing that we just talked about, where their intake can really only pick up one disc at a time because they have one motor powering the whole intake. So as soon as you pick one up, you're just gonna either shoot it out the back as soon as you try and pick up another one. It doesn't work. Trust me, I built a robot that did that before. It was a mistake. I feel like it's a mistake that everybody does once.
Right.
But yeah, so that was kind of the biggest problems with this one. And same kind of robot. They did not do that well on creativity. Did all right on effectiveness, though. It was a good idea.
Definitely. All right, Casey, moving on to 245.
So team 245 came in at rank 64. This is a team that in their scouting sheet, they knew what was happening. They said, we didn't have a chance to finish the robot. So this was a team that obviously didn't have the time to round it all out. They had a bit of a drivetrain there and some polycarb belts to bring it up, but there was just a lot of detail missing there. So either they were still trying to learn the ropes of how to get it all laid out, or just didn't find the time to be able to get it all done.
Yep. All right. Clint, rather. How do you feel about 253?
Yeah, so 253, the Cheesy Boofs, ranked 31st. Robot lacked a ton of detail. It was a very interesting concept. They had this giant ass pneumatic cylinder with their intake that was also like a clamping intake, but then there was something in between that didn't look like the clamps would work. Just a lot of details needed to be flushed out. And one thing that I saw in this competition that, maybe is different from the actual build season, teams never prototyped anything during the CADathon, right? So I think a lot of the issues this team faced would have been, easily dismissed within 6 hours of prototyping. So they ended up ranked 31st. They had a lot of details to work out, but it was probably a decent learning experience for this team, and I hope they take the stuff they learned to move into next season.
Definitely. All right, let's round out the bottom of the teams with 186.
These guys came in 47th. They were actually a pretty cool bot. I actually like this one. They had a really interesting side delivery. So they would pick the human loader and then shoot out the side. I thought it was pretty cool. The frisbee might get stuck in the corner though, which might be an issue. And then similar to what Clint said, a lot of things are not mounted down. You need a lot of angled support. Belly pan could probably spout the entire robot. A lot of small details that makes or breaks a robot. I'm pretty sure this thing would fall apart in most matches. And these are the teams that you never want to see, So I recommend taking a hard look and adding more gussets, adding better mounting features, and then going from there.
First Updates Now FRC is produced in partnership with viewers like you. Want to be our boss? Tell us what we're worth and have a say in how our shows are ran? Visit our Patreon to pledge your support at patreon.com/funfrc.